every week, it seems like the new tools that drop are just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And it's just a nonstop now. That rate of acceleration, you can feel it.
Welcome to the Talking AI podcast, where we talk AI with both experts in the field and early adopters. I'm your host, Matt Page, and we're here to demystify AI for you so you can get some value from it. Let's talk some AI. Today, we got a special guest, Robert Ranson, director and founding member of the Agentics Foundation, also founding partner of Human Race, an agentic engineering firm. And he's an author too, the AI Dividend, preparing for a post-labor economy, all kinds of, you're a renaissance man, Robert. But for those who aren't familiar with the Agentics Foundation, it's an open foundation dedicated to building scalable, intuitive, and human-centered agentic AI systems and infrastructure. And it was originally founded by Reuven Cohen, who hands down is my favorite person to follow in the AI space right now. Robert, first of all, welcome to the show. I think you'd agree there on the Reuven side. The dude's just insane.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Matt. And it's always a lot of fun to have these conversations. And Reuven Cohen is his own singularity.
Yeah. That's probably the best way to describe it right there. And so Robert and I, we were both kind of early members in this small random community that Reuven had started. And it began as like just this Friday meetup online called the AI Hackerspace. And essentially Reuven would jump on, blow our minds with something new he'd built that week. Or maybe just had AI building while he sleeps, which seems to be the standard now. And then he would open the floor and then others would share their projects. And it was just this really cool community that started. And what kind of started as like this casual gathering has grown like wildfire, so much so that it's like an official nonprofit organization. And we're going to deep dive more into the community. I think it's the best one anybody out there that's interested in AI can be a part of. But I also want to get into this central topic around open source versus closed source, right? Because it's one of the core principles behind the Agentics Foundation. At the core of the discussion is that. And I want to start, Robert, just give me what is your definition of open source versus closed source and your stance on it? Let's start super high level and then we'll rabbit hole, dive down some interesting parts.
Sure. I mean, at its core, I think it's not trying to retain control over ideas. And that the tools that we build out around the concepts are meant to be tools freely available to society to run with. And I agree with you, Matt. That's from the very beginning. And actually next week, or on the 26th of April, is our 1 year or 50-second live event.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So
that'll be the actual calendar year. Full year.
I'm trying to remember back when I think it was maybe just some random like LinkedIn post. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even connected with Reuven. I just randomly saw it and I was like, oh, that seems interesting. And I jumped in it. It's evolved so much. Actually, let's stay there. I'm curious, like, what is your story of getting involved in what was the AI Hackerspace and now the Agentics Foundation? Like, how did you meet Reuven? Kind of give me your story, your perspective as this thing's grown into this. Like, how many people are in it?
So
huge.
There's 1,200 members in the WhatsApp space, and that's capped. So we can't invite any more folks in. Occasionally somebody will leave and somebody else will come in. So folks, there's a little bit of rotation, but it's capped. That's why we've also now opened up the Discord side. There will be a place for the community to grow. There's over 85,000, I think, followers on LinkedIn. That's 120,000. And there's at least 65,000 in the Reddit, over several Reddits. So it's an audience that's pretty much closing in on a couple 100,000. And then there's a huge long tail audience for those live events. So every week, Reuven does a coding session on Thursdays, and then we have the open forum demo and new tool drop integration conversations. That's every Friday.
Yeah.
And then those get recorded. Our friends over at Kaltura have that archive available. So you can go back over the last year and look at all those different coding sessions. But for me,
that'd actually be a fun exercise, Robert, is go back to the first episode just as like the throwback and see what we were talking about. Cause I'm sure it'd blow our minds just how far things have progressed.
It does undoubtedly, because every week it seems like the new tools that drop are just mind blowing. that it's just a nonstop now. That rate of acceleration, you can feel it.
Like today, for instance, I was eating lunch, so I jumped on a little bit late. But Reuven was building something. What was it? It was like being able to find rare earth metals or something. I don't know what it was, but it's something insane. Leveraging AI,
It is.
building this system.
Today was one of those moments, Matt, where even his buddies are like, "Wait, I think you're crazy."
The single biggest mistake we see companies make with AI is they don't properly train their teams. We see it all the time. Companies roll out AI tools and expect people to just figure it out. But using AI effectively requires a totally different mindset and skill set. And that's exactly why we built training for every level of your org, from AI training for teams and executives to training engineering teams on our generative driven development methodology. Or if you've already identified your AI use cases and want to just prioritize where to start, we offer an AI roadmap and ROI workshop to help you build a clear plan. It's all about going from we should use AI to actually driving real value with it. Head over to hatchworks.com to learn more.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But where a concept and idea run through deep research, he came across an article, which is a lot of scientific work has been going into quantum signals of magnetic.
It's like, how do you even describe
magnometer, right? Or magnetic fields, with the science being that there are fingerprints of each layer of material and item and concentrations of metals and all that kind of, those all have fingerprints. It's just that we have not looked through the right set of tools to find those fingerprints. Much like it took us a long time to figure out gravitational waves. And it speaks just so potently to the era that we're in, because now an incredibly talented engineer like Reuven with these tools can utilize a recursive, like a chain of deep research, to really explore the entire footprint of that scientific body of work, and then hypothesize about what a code base that utilizes the science and tests for it would look like, and then build it and then run demos within 24 hours. So
that's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. It means that frontier scientific work around the Earth, around the entire planet, can be identified and have tools built around it very quickly. That's acceleration. That's what it feels like in civilization, when those kinds of advances can be made, discovered, tested, validated, and pushed forward so quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned something, and folks want to check out, like you mentioned, the recordings are out there, and you can join the community as well. We'll get into some of that later. But you mentioned the Thursday sessions; those kind of came later. This is like,
that's right,
Reuven's, call it vibe coding sessions, where you can just be a fly on the wall and see him vibe coding, and you can see how he thinks about it, his stream of consciousness as he approaches it. And he said something today that I think really resonated with me. He talked about like the idea of vibe coding almost being like on a spectrum, because there's one spectrum where it's like you're literally just starting from nothing and you're just like, it truly is like vibes based, you're letting AI guide you. And then to the other end of the spectrum, you truly are having a detailed plan of what you want to do and build, and there's varying degrees of where that is. And then he's also built this Spark framework too, which I don't know how much you've played with that, but that's essentially his methodology for using AI to build.
Yeah, specification, pseudocode, architecture, revisions, and then convention. So to work with AI coding assistants in order to give them an overview of what it is they're about to build. And it's wonderful too, because I think Reuven first really formulated that back about 8 months ago, and it's been adopted now. Now, when you look up RuMode Boomerang or custom RuModes, it's coming back. Perplexity's coming back with that, with the Spark framework. So really hats off to the work that Reuven's been doing in the space. Agentic engineering.
Define that for us, because I don't think a lot of people either know what that is, or even the term agentic. I don't know about you, but spell check still says it's not a word for me.
Right.
On my PC.
They'll catch up. Agentic engineering is not the process of building agents. Agentic engineering is the process of building systems that build things. Right?
Yeah.
So agentic means it can interact with information, and then based on a goal set, make decisions about how it's going to respond to that information. So it takes action. It is agentic. has agency. The key point is that there's a touch point with the information that's incoming in order for it to formulate it. It's not an A/B. It's not a binary decision. We can utilize large language models to give it a space of logic to be much, much more powerful. But genetic engineering is literally building systems that build things, right? And that's what we've been doing for the last year, is really exploring the space of what engineering looks like with artificial intelligence and what kinds of things that you can do with that. And you still hear an awful lot online and LinkedIn and everything. Oh, it's not there. This is really important. And Matt, you put your finger right on it. The vibe coding to agentic engineering and that spectrum, what that looks like, is really whether or not you understand what's being built and you've planned for what's being built and when it's going off the rails or not. Agentic engineering is somebody who's learned the space, the architecture, or is a previous computer science engineer, a developer, and they're not just having the coding assistant go from scratch on its own, figured as you go. That's the vibe coding space, which is beautiful because literally millions and millions of people around the world and growing every single day are diving back into software and what they can create and discovering this new tool. And the ease of developing software is coming closer and closer to everybody to make it universally accessible. You can build great stuff. We're not there yet, but it's coming closer every day and people are learning more quickly. So they're approaching the technology every day. And the impact of that is more creativity, more discovery, faster iteration. And that impact is a huge boom to society within the right guardrails.
And to your point, there is this like knowledge gap right now. It's almost like this arbitrage over knowledge of where the technology actually is. And I think two key points. One is even if AI LLMs did not progress one iota from today, there's still so much untapped potential. And I think that's a big thing. And then B, y'all go check out, for the listeners, the episode I did with Michael Liu from Stripe. The key phrase he said that sticks with me almost every day is like, this is as bad as AI and LLMs are ever going to be.
Right.
It's only going to keep getting better.
Yes.
You put those two things together, it's insane. And I love how you define the agentic side. It's very much a systems thinking. You're building the systems to build the systems and whatnot. And we're a similar type of firm, Hatrix AI. So it's the way I like to describe it in simple terms is we build AI native solutions and we use AI to build them.
Yeah.
On that side, it's like you do those two things, but the key thing is you're using AI to build, in essence. The other cool thing too, we mentioned the Spark framework earlier. Reuven open sources everything he does. And we'll put that in the show notes if anybody wants to go deep into that. Like, it's almost absurd how much stuff he open sources and just puts out there. But that's like his foundational view and mindset is things should be open. This shouldn't be gate kept. But like back to the original kind of closed versus open discussion, this is like a very interesting debate to me because I see points on both sides that make sense, right? There's the point on one side around just the transparency and trust and, the safety side of it, right? Because some will say, oh, it needs to be closed because this is so powerful and it can't get into the hands of nefarious actors and people with ill intent. And on the other side, it should be completely democratized and open, and that will most benefit society versus a small number of folks at the corporate level dictating how this grows. And like both points, I'm like, yes, makes sense. What's your take there? Especially like in the wrong hands. I think that's the scariest point for people is like when it gets in the wrong hands. And can you stop that anyways, I think is the point. But I'm just curious, like going into some of those points around the debate.
Yeah, it's entirely, all those concerns are completely legitimate. So they are things that we need to constructively and creatively solve for. I think most people would agree it would be uncomfortable to have a singular entity or organization that had the sole access to near infinite, cheap, and abundant intelligence. And that was not, to some degree, ubiquitously understood and accessible. And that's the heart of it for the Agentics Foundation and Agentics.org, is that these tools are so important that the awareness of how to use them, what they can do, how to build them, how to develop them responsibly, deploy them responsibly. All of that needs to be open. Now, transparency, accountability, traceability, and how we identify and respond to the potential of bad actors, that's a tool set. And that's a number of tool sets that a number of organizations are working on. And also, let's be practical, let's be realistic. Governments and leading institutions are going to retain the most powerful models that they've been able to build for a period of time before they're public. So there will always be a leading edge of governance. And obviously, as a civilization, you want to be able to have trust and faith in the transparency and accountability of your governance, but also ensure that the ability to protect all of us collectively. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things there. The base level, like you said before, of what we've already got is so incredibly powerful. And we've only scratched the surface in terms of utilization and where that can be applied. That we've got lots to work with already.
Yeah. My view is I like to believe that there's more good actors out in the world than bad actors. When something's truly open source, that there's almost these two forces combating each other, and ultimately I think the good will win. At least I like to believe that. But there is power in the decentralization of this like insanely powerful tool and innovation, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The collective input of human creativity, because we have such great context of the entirety of our lives and our worldviews, uniquely still leading in terms of side by side of being able to direct our creativity anyways. That's why I love the Friday Live events, because you get to hear from so many. And what Reuven's been doing is he's been showing what's possible in the hands of an amazing engineer, right?
Yeah.
Taking everything to its logical conclusion. And it's so the agentics.org, we want to make sure that those tools, the understanding, the repos the members are working on, all of that is available. And it's really exciting. We've got, I think there's about 80 chapter requests around the world. And one of the first in Asia will be in Singapore. So there's lots of really neat work there, because at the ground level, people want to know in their communities who else is involved, who else is engaged, what are the leading tool sets. And so those local chapters will be a great asset for the community.
So I think the other point with open source versus closed source is, how do you define it? Because you hear like companies and model makers coming out saying they're open source, but they've just essentially given the weights to their model. What's your view on that? Do you view that as fully open source, or is there a spectrum of open versus closed source as well?
For sure. Yeah, the weights of the models are that's open. That's an open source model. Otherwise, yeah, it is. It's just a variation on the theme if you're not exposing those weights. The ability now for lighter open source models to train up on leading closed source models means that the economics of that intelligence gap really significantly change, right? Since the Quen, which led to the DeepSeek, which
Quen was Alibaba's model, and then was it DeepSeek that leveraged that? So you're almost saying they're building on the backs of these other models in a sense as an approach for their training of the new model in a sense.
Yeah, that's right. Because they can just tap right in, directly interact with the leading thinking models, and then benefit from that logic exchange. I think the repo that Rue was talking about was DPRO, which allows you to, and it's not expensive either. It's not what it was 6 months ago.
We talked a little bit about Reuven's Spark framework that he leverages, but like on the AI IDE coding front, curious your take on the different tools, which ones you like, which ones you use for different purposes. And then this may be old news by the time this launches, but I know you saw it a couple of days ago, OpenAI's talking about acquiring Windsurf. And what does that start to do? But maybe start on just the different AI IDEs that are out there. What's your go-to? Are there ones you use in different scenarios?
I've been using Klein since it first came out, and that has been my preference from the very beginning. And now RuCode,
which is built on,
that's it. Yeah, which is a fork off of Klein. That's right. And they've that community, they're doing just great work. And so Windsurf, Cursor, the really for public facing small projects, both lovable, you can get pretty far now, especially that you can integrate Superbase and work with that. But as far as in the IDE, for me, it is completely RuCode with custom modes. Boomerang,
Yeah.
being able to create subtasks and custom modes, and the creativity that of what we can do with those custom modes is just it's a wonderful combination. And that is, you do that well with the Spark framework, which means all the lifting comes in the planning and the articulation of what it is that you want the software to do.
Yeah.
And user stories and functional specs and everything else builds up from there. That's where the work is. That with RuCode's custom modes and the Spark framework, that gets us there.
So I want you to go deeper on those two things, custom modes and the boomerang, but just for people as well, because I feel like a lot of people either aren't using these tools or they're new to them. But like RuCode, for instance, you can be in just a regular old VS Code instance and just, it's like a plugin, right? So you kind of have the chat window there. So that's the way you can access that. Technically, you can do that in Cursor as well, but do you need to, I guess, is the question. But go deeper on those two things, custom modes, boomerang. What are those? How should you think about them?
Yes.
For folks listening.
Okay, great. Yeah. So RuCode, VSC extension, open source. You can set and select the models that you're going to work with, that you want it to work with. And it lives on the left side of your IDE, and you interact with it, and it can read, write, edit, do all kinds of, create the code for it, or edit or review, or you can keep it in ask mode and you just have conversations about your code.
So that's an underutilized thing,
Yes.
by the way, is like collaborating, aligning with your whatever tool you're using just to plan together, right?
Yep, that's it. That's it. Because in that dialogue, all kinds of really neat insights and creative inspirations come. So key is that have that fun and do that exploration before you really get into say, okay, now this is what we're going to build. And so you've got that mapped out. So with RuCodes, now you can think about it for a second. I want to turn off the ability to edit, leave the ability to read, and we'll call that ask mode. So then I said, great, go through my project documentation. Let's talk about how we're going to, what kind of ideas we have for the UI, right? And have a conversation back and forth. Maybe what are some interesting visualizations we could pull from the data? That's ask mode. Architect mode, let's say, you can give it a specific set of custom instructions whenever it's in architect mode. You describe how it is that you want that documentation and those plans and the specs to be created. How do you want them written? What's the form? What's the flavor of it, right? Your general approach to writing those kinds of documents. So different modes can have different custom instructions so that when you enter that mode, it's wearing a specific hat. And RuCode enables us to create custom modes. So we can create any mode that we want in a template in the RuModes. And now we can move between them. Okay, there's one really important mode, just like in any multi-agent system, interestingly enough, because this sort of transitions RuCode from a coding assistant into more like a multi-agent framework, specifically for coding. And that most important mode is the orchestrator mode. Yeah. So that's the mode that it's going to be in when it's thinking about the project or the part of the project that it is working on. And it's the one that is going to determine what the next task is and which mode it's going to assign it to. Fascinating. That's the boomerang.
Yeah. It's almost like having another human in the loop in like a weird way. I don't know. I get more into this like mode of as I'm working with AI, I intentionally pretend like I'm working with another human in a sense.
Yep. It is fascinating where you can go when you get down the rabbit hole of coding, we have a whole team of specialists in the development environment, right? One of the first things I did when I saw the RuModes is I said, great, let me create a custom researcher mode. And I just laid out, use the OpenAI API connection and GPT-4o search preview model. And anytime you need to look up API documents, just use that. And I've got my key and my M, and it works. So now when the coding team is building a project, and it runs into a problem with an API setup, it can just look it up and continue on.
Yeah.
And then Chris Royce morphed that on RuSuggest and morphed it into a Perplexity MCP server. So now you can do deep research while coding. Phenomenal.
Earlier, you mentioned Lovable, which we glazed over that, but I got to say, that's almost my favorite go-to tool for just call it vibe coding or whatever. And the beauty of it is you mentioned the connection with Supabase.
Yep.
So I've got into this nice little method that I work, especially for like niche like use cases and things where I'll almost have it define, you align with it on what you want to build, but I'll have it like build out the landing page of the thing first.
Yes.
It's something about that does this nice like alignment on the positioning and what we're trying to build, the value prop, and then connect into Supabase, have it do authentication, set up the back end, and then you just start building feature by feature. But it's pretty insane of how capable it is when you have it integrated with Supabase. And then the design is just very impressive in terms of what it can do from a design perspective.
Haven't they done a wonderful job on that? It's really
Yeah,
nice that it puts out in the sandbox environment so that as you're asking, for example, the other day, I'm a sculptor, a wholesale.
Did you sculpt that behind you, the thing behind you?
Yes.
Who is that?
That is no one in particular. That's just a clay study.
I didn't know if it was like Eris. Those listening, there's a beautiful clay sculpture. What do you call it? A bust behind
portrait. Yeah,
Robert.
that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I thought I was retired from the business world until Gen AI
now
came
you're
out.
back in. AI brought you back in.
Completely immersed in the studio work. And over the last and when Gen AI first was publicly available, 3.5 came out, it was because the lifetime before the Clay Studio, I was an operations exec. The impact on workflows, operations, organizations was just so obvious. It hit me like a 2x4, and I've been immersed ever since. But I do still keep the clay work for my Zen counterbalance.
Nice. There you go. There you go. You do the vibe sculpting. It's the next thing. That's the thing
Absolutely.
that's caught on is like there's vibe everything, which is funny how that's become like a moniker.
Yeah, but Lovable is Anton and the crew. I think they've done obviously they've done a phenomenal job, and and the work that they do under the hood it's just a wonderful user experience. So you can chat in natural language. You've got dev mode. I don't know that's actually trademarkable or copyrightable, but
yeah, they got into issues with Figma. The response back to Figma was funny. It's some back and forth there.
Oh, right. I didn't see the response yet. I'm sure it would. Yeah, that'll be good. But Lovable itself is a wonderful program. And what this means is, demos, value props. You can create a little app just for a meeting. It makes sense now.
And for non-developers,
yes,
like there is this side of it that's like you and Reuven and folks like that are like deep into it. But anybody can now have that experience. And I feel like it's such a good inroad to then say, oh, how does this work? How does that work? Then you leverage AI to teach you. And there's nothing stopping you from progressing to where Reuven using AI as your teacher.
That is the uncomfortable truth. That literally the ability to access the information and create a self-learning program and expose yourself to an entirely new corpus of thought and knowledge is widely and freely available.
Yeah. And this is a nice segue. Last thing I want to hit on, you mentioned the folks at Lovable. They're a tiny team in comparison to what they've done. And that's a new pattern that's emerging. When you have AI, you just don't need as many humans. Mm-hmm. You've written this book called The AI Dividend, Preparing for a Post-Labor Economy. I'm just curious, and I think folks can let us know where they can find it. But what's your thesis around this? I think this is like one of the next interesting debates that like us as society will begin to have. And I think it can go a multitude of different ways.
Entirely. Obviously, we're not there yet, but the writing is on the wall. We can feel the impact already. If you are a young computer science graduate, you know that we already are seeing the change in society and the impact as these tools become increasingly more capable. But it's the systems that are built with the tools, right? I suspect AGI won't be achieved by the base language model necessarily, but by some really clever engineering that is built on top of one of these,
such a good point.
right? Large language models. Yeah, the impact on the workplace. Let's think in a long term, 5 years, right? Which is almost impossible to conceive of what that escalation and speed.
I love how 5 years is now long term, which is just hilarious. But it is
like
very
investors used to want 5-year financial forecasts. It's like even 3-year forecast. What does that mean right now? Contracts that companies are entering into, big long term. The implications are incredible. Anyways, so we know what's coming, and that is that the ability for these systems to be able to outperform the vast majority of humans in the vast majority of economically viable roles. That's how artificial general intelligence is currently defined by OpenAI, which most people don't realize.
Yep.
AGI is defined as being able to do your job, right? If it can do most jobs, then that's the definition of AGI as it stands with OpenAI right now. That's the course that we're on. Whether or not, if 3 to 5% of the working population gets displaced, that is a massive societal impact. And we haven't been having the conversations necessary to digest and really prepare for what that might look like, let alone the 30% mark, the 60% mark, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of opportunities for things for us to do as humans with each other, but that the economically performing tasks for the majority of the economy will be capable of being executed by artificial intelligence in soon. So now what? Here's the principle of the book and what I believe is best for society. And it's just my idea. And there's lots of others. And it's not novel. There's 3 things that went into the discovery of the validation of the theory of the current era of Gen AI. And that is the science, the capital, right? The folks that backed it and paid for it, and the data.
Yep. And
the science and the capital are recognized with equity, and the data is a complete mess, right?
Yeah.
Pilfered. Now we're just talking about going back and say, let's just get rid of IP and forget copyright. And so scientists get paid and the capitalists get paid, but the people that contributed the data to the achievement of the breakthrough don't. And I think that's a fatal flaw. And it's now made its way through the entirety of the large language model ecosystem, because you can't track where that stolen data went, but it's being utilized
and that's the
everywhere.
thing. It's very hard to trace from like an IP perspective. So it's like, even if you wanted to, good luck, you know what I mean? Because it's just so difficult to truly tell
what's in there.
It's leveraging in its response.
That's right. Especially constitutional AI will have layer protection systems to make sure that it's not responding in a way that does clearly display what it's aware of, what it's been trained on. So that leads me to the idea that data should be recognized. It should be recognized as effectively as equity, and it should be paid a dividend. And that dividend should be available to everybody on Earth. And it should come directly from the economic activity of artificial intelligence. And there is no reason that it ought to be something restricted to basic, because the economic implications for us will be profound. And the ability for all of us to benefit from that structure specifically, a dividend paid out by participation in equity, it takes it out of the hands of governance, because governments are led by parties and parties are fickle, right? And this is much more foundational. I think that an option for how to address the increasing displacement of human labor would be for a universal participation in dividends of the economic activity of artificial intelligence. And that's the
I like how you framed it as I like how you framed it as dividends too. It's almost like democratized capitalism.
Yes.
In a sense.
Because all of our data has contributed.
Concept.
We can't say where, how much, when, but we know it's there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. And where can folks find the book? Is it?
It's up on Amazon.
Is it out there on
and then
Amazon?
the Kindle version is titled Tokenized. And there's
nice. And then
more words coming.
Human Race, that's your company on the agentic engineering side.
That's right.
I think folks can find that. What's the website for that?
Humanrace.ai. Yeah. And we're largely experimental, but also we love joint ventures. So if there's projects or joint ventures that people have an idea, they want to get it built, that's the kind of stuff that we love to engage in.
Yeah, we need to do something together there. What's the coolest thing you've built or been a part of or that you've seen out of curiosity? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I
Count
mean,
the one we saw today by Reuven.
Yeah, I know, because you can just pull things out of the ether. That's really good for us to exercise our elasticity of creativity. Right? For what I'm working on right now, which I really am enjoying, excuse me, and the first newsletter is about to come out in the next week or so, but that's the awareness layer. The awareness layer as a critical structural component of any organization or business, conceptually. And what I'm working on within that is that chain of deep research and how to map out that creative space when you point a team of agents in a specific direction. But the awareness layer, I think, is one of the applications of agents and the applications of artificial intelligence that really hasn't crystallized clearly yet. And I think that's a space that we can contribute to because, for example, a product owner, you take a startup, and in the old days, the startup would come up, they'd do a competitive analysis, right? And so here's all the competitors, and this is what the space looks like. They do it once, maybe revisit it 8 months later. Something big happens. That's it. That's gone. Now with agents, we can be aware of aware of absolutely every competitor in our space, have all of their concepts mapped out. We know exactly what their feature set is. We know what their pricing is. We know what their sentiment analysis in the marketplace is. And that's all dashboard. And that is a tool that I can use as a product leader in order to ideate and A/B test into. So that's an awareness layer in one specific, really obvious case, but it doesn't exist for the vast majority of companies yet. There's an enormous amount of development work and opportunity that will come just from organizations opening up their eyes and expanding their field of view in the marketplace.
It's funny, on the competitive research side, I was listening to a podcast, I think it was like the Greg Eisenberg, but he had the CEO from Lindy, which is one of these AI, think of it like innate and create AI in that space, right? And he was getting overwhelmed on the competitive side because he had an agent that was doing this research for him, and it's another company. What he did is he set it up to say, okay, all those companies you researched, let me know in 6 months or whatever time frame where they are now.
Right.
Life cycle. You see that 90% of them just fizzled out, and it allowed him to calm his nerves of how many people are actually progressing past just like a splashy launch. It's kind of an interesting angle.
Matt, it's beautiful because where this leads is 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, I was actually at the beginning, about a year ago. Artificial intelligence in the longer run is going to be deflationary, obviously, because it enables things to make it's pennies per millions of tokens for this intelligence. This is a really good case point because when you have the ability to have near complete market visualization in a sector, then ultimately that's going to drive creativity and it's going to drive competition. And one of those buckets is price, and you have market triage, and it's more difficult for people to say, I'm going to sell this for $800 when I can buy it for $50. And I make my living on ignorance, right? Yeah. My competitive advantage is you don't know what I paid for it. Yeah. That's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Another fascinating area where there's going to be big implications.
Yeah, so many areas. Let's give the Agentics Foundation plug for Reuven's community, free for anybody to join, but give the breakdown. This turning into an actual not-for-profit foundation is relatively recent, in the past month or so. But how do people get involved? Where do they go? By the time this comes out, the Discord, it's out there now, but I think it'll be humming along. But give us the lowdown in terms of how people get engaged.
Sure. The website is agentics.org. And on that, you can find the Discord, you can find the WhatsApp. The WhatsApp, you may have to try to jump in a couple times because, again, it's capped out. But on there, you can find everything about the organization. The website is in evolution, so there's some tools on there. Ultimately, the Agentics Foundation, there's so much talent and experience in the 1,200, let alone the 150,000. but of active, engaged conversations that are taking place every single day in that WhatsApp group. Really, it's about giving a forum for the membership base to be able to put forward tools and ideas and best practices for each other. And that is the foundation. And then the working local chapters are about making sure that people have networks in their local community to be able to explore the tools and help communities around the world put them into play. Yeah, the Agentics Foundation, I'm temporarily leading up the AI Safety and Responsible Deployment Committee. There is, in order to ensure that with these tools comes a framework and an understanding and another set of tools that help us do that responsibly and proactively positive social impact. And then there's a committee on research and, of course, member services, the operations side, the chapter management. So there's a little over 10 different working groups or teams or committees within the organization, and it's open. We welcome everybody to participate and hop in. They can sign up for that on the website, and then also chapters. If you're in Milan or there's a city, a community that you would like to host live events and have the support of the Agentics Foundation there on content promotion and actual materials to work with, then you can sign up as an ambassador on the Agentics.org site as well. So really excited.
I'd say for everybody, come to a Friday Hackerspace session.
Yes.
And you'll understand why we're high on this community. It's the best community out there. There's a lot of AI communities. It's overwhelming. This is the one that I proactively recommend to people. But Robert, thanks for being on, talking some AI. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah, Matt, wonderful. It's always great fun. Good to see you again. And I look forward to hearing you've got a bunch of great projects on yourself. So look forward to hearing about them.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to the Talking AI podcast. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to leave us a review. We love those. For more info on Talking AI, visit talkingaipodcast.com.